Welcome back to the board. Today, two of the strongest shogi engines face off, elmo moving first, as cent, against PT. Let's follow it quietly, move by move. Cent pushes the pawn to 76. Goat pushes the pawn to 84. Cent pushes the pawn to 56. Goat pushes the pawn to 85. Cent plays the bishop to 77. Goat pushes the pawn to 34. Cent pushes the pawn to 55. Goat pushes the pawn to 74. Cent swings the rook to 58, arranging rook approach. Goat plays the king to 42, building a Yagura-style castle around it. Cent plays the king to 48, building a Minyo castle around it. Goat's king moves to 32. Cent plays the silver to 78, an inaccuracy that clearly favors Cent, as the engine preferred the silver to 38 instead. Goat pushes the pawn to 14. Cent pushes the pawn to 54, an inaccuracy that the engine preferred to be the pawn to 96, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat captures the pawn on 54. Cent's rook now captures the pawn on 54. Goat's bishop now captures the bishop on 77, promoting to a horse. Cent's knight now captures the horse on 77. Goat drops a bishop on 45. Cent plays the rook to 53, promoting to a dragon. And Goat captures the pawn on 27 with the bishop, promoting to a horse. Cent plays the dragon to 56, a mistake that the engine notes would have been better as silver to 38, and now the game clearly favors Cent. Goat plays the silver to 22. Cent drops a pawn on 54, but the engine preferred the gold to 38 instead, and this was a mistake, as the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat plays the silver to 62. Cent drops a bishop on 46, a move the engine much preferred on 55, and this blunder means the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat swings the rook over to 92. Cent pushes the pawn to 53, promoting it to a token, but the engine would have preferred the gold to 38. Goat silver captures the token on 53. Cent's dragon takes the silver on 53. Goat drops the knight to 33. Cent plays the dragon to 55, a blunder that clearly favors Cent, though the engine preferred dropping a silver on 36. Goat drops a pawn on 56. Cent's dragon captures the pawn on 56. Goat pushes the pawn to 75. Cent plays the knight to 65, which is a blunder, as the engine preferred the silver to 38 instead, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat's pawn captures the pawn on 76. Cent's knight advances to 53, and Cent is clearly on top now. Goat brings the gold to 51. Cent's knight takes the gold on 41, promoting to a promoted knight, and Cent is clearly on top now. Goat's gold captures the promoted knight on 41, but Cent is still clearly on top. Cent drops a pawn on 54, a blunder that the engine thought was a silver to 38, but the game still clearly favors Cent. Goat pushes the pawn to 77, promoting to a token, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent captures the token on 77 with the silver, and is clearly on top now. Goat drops a pawn on 52. Cent plays the silver to 38, and is clearly on top now. Goat plays the horse to 28. Cent pushes the pawn to 36, a blunder that now clearly favors Cent, the engine preferred dropping a gold on 82. Goat's horse captures the silver on 38 with check, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's gold captures the horse on 38. Goat drops a rook to 72, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent plays the dragon to 66, a blunder which the engine preferred drops a pawn on 73 instead, but the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat plays the knight to 45. Cent drops a gold on 56, a blunder which clearly favors Cent, though the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 83 instead. Goat plays the pawn to 64, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent drops a pawn on 76, a blunder that now clearly favors Cent, though the engine preferred the pawn to 53, promoting to a token instead. Goat drops a silver to 65. Cent captures the silver on 65 with their gold, and is clearly on top now. Goat plays the pawn captures the gold on 65, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's dragon takes the pawn on 65, and they are clearly on top now. Well, Goat drops a gold on 57, checking Cent, who is still clearly on top. Cent plays the bishop captures the gold on 57, a blunder as the engine preferred the king to 39 instead, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat's knight captures the bishop on 57, but Cent is still clearly on top. Cent's king takes the knight on 57, and they're still clearly on top. Goat drops a bishop on 44, and Cent is still clearly on top. Cent drops a knight on 55, a blunder that now clearly favors Goat, though the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 66. Goat drops a knight on 51, a move that surprisingly means Cent is now clearly on top. Cent drops a gold on 56, a blunder when the engine preferred a pawn to 53, promoting to a token. Goat swings the rook to 62, a ranging rook approach, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent plays the dragon to 74, a blunder, as the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 64 instead, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat's bishop captures the knight on 55. Cent's gold captures the bishop on 55, and Cent is clearly on top now. Goat's knight goes to 63, but Cent is still clearly on top. Cent plays the gold to 64, a blunder that the engine preferred to dropping a bishop on 26. Goat plays the knight to 55, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent drops a silver to 56, a blunder that clearly favors Cent now, though the engine preferred gold to 63. Goat drops a pawn to 73, but Cent is still clearly on top. Cent plays the dragon to 75, which is a blunder, as the engine preferred the dragon to 65. Goat plays the knight captures the pawn on 67, promoting to a promoted knight, with check, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's king captures the promoted knight on 67, though the engine preferred the silver to capture instead, and this blunder means Cent is now clearly favored. Goat pushes the pawn to 74. Cent's dragon takes the pawn on 74, and they're clearly on top now. Goat drops a knight on 82. Cent plays the dragon to 75, which is a blunder, as the game now clearly favors Cent, though the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 71 instead. Goat drops a pawn on 74, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent plays the dragon to 66, but the engine preferred the dragon to 65 instead, and this is a blunder as the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat pushes their pawn to 75. Cent's dragon captures the pawn on 75, which was a blunder, as the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 55 instead, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat drops a pawn on 74, but Cent is clearly on top here. Cent plays the dragon to 66, but the engine preferred the dragon to 65 instead. This is a blunder, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat responds by bringing the rook to 72. Cent drops a bishop on 55, a blunder that clearly favors Cent, though the engine preferred pushing the pawn to 53, promoting it to a token. Goat plays the gold to 31, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent plays the gold to 63, and Cent is clearly on top now. Goat plays the rook to 71. Cent captures the knight on 82 with the bishop, promoting to a horse, which was a blunder, as the engine preferred the gold to capture the pawn on 52 instead. Goat plays the rook to 51, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent plays the gold to 62. Goat brings their rook to 41, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's gold captures the pawn on 52, and they are clearly on top now. Goat's king moves to 21. Cent plays the pawn to 53, promoting to a token, a blunder that clearly favors Cent, as the engine preferred the gold to capture the rook on 41 instead. Goat pushes the pawn to 75, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent captures the pawn on 75 with their pawn, a blunder, as the engine preferred the gold capturing the rook on 41 instead, and the game now clearly favors Cent. Goat pushes their pawn to 86, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent captures the pawn on 86 with their pawn, a blunder as the engine preferred capturing the rook on 41 with the gold. Goat pushes their pawn to 15, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent drops a knight to 25, a blunder, as the engine preferred capturing the rook on 41 with the gold. Goat plays the rook to 71, but Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's horse captures the rook on 71, and Cent now has a forced checkmate. Goat plays the pawn to 24, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Cent drops a pawn on 23, a blunder, as the engine preferred the token to 42 instead, though the game still clearly favors Cent. Goat's pawn captures the knight on 25, though Cent is clearly on top now. Cent's pawn captures the silver on 22, promoting to a token with check, and now Cent has a forced checkmate. Goat's gold captures the token on 22, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Cent plays the token, capturing the pawn on 43, but this move is a blunder, as the engine preferred dropping a rook on 31 instead, though Cent still has a forced checkmate. Goat drops a knight on 55, checking Cent, who still has a forced checkmate. Cent's dragon takes the knight on 55, a blunder the engine preferred to be a silver capture, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Goat drops a pawn on 66, checking the king, but Cent still has that forced checkmate. Cent's king captures the pawn on 66, a blunder when the engine preferred the dragon to take, but Cent still has that forced checkmate. Goat's king moves to 12, but Cent still has that forced checkmate. Cent's dragon takes the pawn on 25, and with that, Cent now has a forced checkmate. Goat plays the gold to 23, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Cent plays the dragon captures the pawn on 15, with check, a blunder as the engine preferred drops a rook on 42 instead, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Goat's king moves to 21, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Cent drops a silver on 32, with check, a blunder as the engine preferred dropping a rook on 61 instead, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Goat's king moves to 22, but Cent still has a forced checkmate. Cent drops a rook on 21, with check, a blunder as the engine preferred dropping a bishop on 31 instead, and the game now clearly favors Goat. Before we finish, here's something the engine saw. Around move 114, Cent had a forced checkmate in 15. Let's watch how it would have gone. And there it is, Elmo takes the game. Thank you for sitting with me at the board. I'll see you at the next one.